All right, without further ado, I want to introduce to you my friend, my buddy, Mr. Donnie Prager. Take it away, Don. Welcome to the Pulmonary Wellness Foundation Lecture Series 2020 / Donnie Prager, Donnie Vapor World Tour.
Donnie Vapor, yes, here we go. Got the news the other day. 3 to 5, I'm going away. And it chilled me to the bone. Never felt so more alone. I just want to blink my eyes and be okay. We live our lives in passing days. Mindless drones of rat race haze. Day it punched me in the nose. Suddenly my whole world froze. Oh my God, there's gotta be another way. And there is. Smile every day at each other. Let them know you care. Awake every day and discover magic in the air. Spreading love and inspiration. Well, that would be my friend. This may take you by surprise. Now I've come to realize that you're still very much alive. Outside that work of me like hive, I see gratitude glowing in your eyes. When I wake up and feel renewed, so much more I want to do. 'Cause we're so powerful, you see. We get to write our destiny. So good that I no longer feel it blue. Won't you smile every day at each other? Let them know you care. Awake every day and discover the magic in the air. Spreading love and inspiration. Well, that would be my prayer. Smile every day at each other. Let them know you care. Awake every day and discover the magic in the air. Spreading love and inspiration. Well, that would be my prayer. That song is called The Prayer. Here's a fun-loving, fun song called Money Grows on Trees. What if it did? Would you tell anybody?
Donnie Vapor!
Easy come, easy go. It burns a hole through my pocket. I could never watch it grow. I spin it fast like a rocket. It gratifies me instantly. I even bought a pot of missing. I go from full down to empty. Money grows on trees that you like to help me drink it. Bet you would. Money grows on trees, you gotta fake it till you make it. Bang, clink, clink, clinkety clank, chit, 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 chang. All right, good evening, everybody. Exquisite taste, expensive style. Yes, I'm a real big spender. I wake up in denial from a night out on a bender. Life is short, so let's have fun. You're all invited to my party. This song goes out to everyone. Sing with me. Money grows on trees that you like to help you shake it. Money grows on rich man sure has fun. Yes, I'm so stinking wealthy. All day long, I made it bum because my bank account is healthy. I lie here tanning in the sun. Oh yes, I blow the horn of plenty. This game of life I surely won. Money grows on trees, but you like to help to shake it. Money grows on trees, you gotta fake it till you make it. Bang, click, click, clickety, clank, chit, 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 chang. Hey! Woo!
Ladies and gentlemen, Donnie Vapor.
Thank you so very much. It is, let me just say, it's an absolute pleasure and an honor that it's been given to me to inspire you guys by this wonderful, fantastic organization that offers and gives this complete rehab program. We're talking body, mind, spirit, and soul free to people all over the world. And I can't thank Noah and Marcella enough for their incredible and tireless efforts. So I say, let's all do our part. I'm just getting my breath after singing, to help this incredible organization grow. No amount donated is too small or insignificant. In fact, it's the accumulation of small building materials in comparison to its finished structure that builds the world's largest skyscrapers. That's a Donnie Vapor quote. Now, without further ado, I turn it over to Noah.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another edition of Ultimate Pulmonary Wellness Live. Thank you so much, Donnie Vapor. Everybody give it up for Donnie Vapor. All righty. So, I wanted to just take a couple of moments and, Don, if we could just talk a little bit, because Don is not just an IPF advocate. Don is a patient. And if you thought that was a tough song to sing, imagine how it feels, with pulmonary fibrosis. So, Don, I was hoping you could just talk for a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit about your story and sort of how you got to this moment in time.
Sure. It all feels so surreal, but let me harken back to, I was still am, I shouldn't say was, a musician pretty much all my life. I had multiple jobs, and I was the wedding singer and a couple of different bands, and I was also in the hair replacement business. I was your regular average Joe that worked a bunch, loves people, loves music, and had recently gotten married almost 6 years ago, was it? And then I started feeling a little funky, and right before my wedding, I wound up having to be rushed to the hospital. I contracted contact dermatitis from wearing hair replacement products. They put a glue, this type of, some type of bond that didn't agree with my skin, and my eyes got glassy, and I didn't look right. Rushed to the hospital 2 days prior to my wedding. And they're like, your blood pressure's out of whack. You got this contact dermatitis. I'm like, wow. And they're like, and if you want to do something's weird with your breathing. And they did some x-rays, and my lungs were whited out. And they're like, and you have pneumonia. I'm like, oh, wow, this is fun. All right, so right before my wedding, I was set to do a Roaring 20s theme. I had this really cool fedora I was going to wear. So they wrapped my head like a mummy, and I put the fedora on. Nobody knew I was bandaged up. And I went through the whole pneumonia thing because I'm a trooper. And I made my speeches, and I got through it. And that's when I had a follow-up with my doctor. And he said, I hear some crackling sounds in your lungs. I went to another a pulmonologist at that point. And they're like, oh, we're going to have to do an open lung biopsy. And I'm like, open who? What? And I was thrust into this world of, they're like, we think you have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis. I was like, slow down, man. What the heck is that? It was crazy. And then I went home. He gave me no information. I was scared, what-less. I started to look stuff up online, and I realized that I had what they told me 3 to 5 years to live. And I went, oh, wow, this is fun. And I kind of ran away from everything. That's my story. And I started doing as much alternative research as possible. I still worked for a while. And then finally, I went to a different pulmonologist on the behest of someone that worked for me at the time in the hair replacement business. She's like, come see my dad. He's a great doctor. And I said, sure, let's try it. Second time around, he referred me to a pulmonologist friend of his. Long story short, I got the open lung biopsy. And I was referred to top pulmonologist in the city. out of Mount Sinai Hospital, and they said, you have idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, we think. I said, wow. And they referred me to a Dr. Robbins in Columbia, and they talked about the potential for double lung transplant. And to be quite honest with you, it was way too much for this kid. I just totally flipped. And I just didn't want to believe it was real, and I ran away again. And it wasn't until recent, maybe over a year ago, that I was kind of fending for myself. I didn't have any doctors. And I tried so many protocols that I learned. I invented protocols for myself. I said, you know what? If I'm going to go out, might as well work on myself. I might as well be my own doctor. And some stuff I did prove to be pretty good. And then I wound up I got sick. That's what my surgeon told me. When he did the biopsy, he said, you know, one thing you got to be careful of is getting sick. That's what's going to get you. Otherwise, you might be all right. And I'm like, thanks, bro. So I might have to put the gloves on, the old Michael Jackson, no hugging, no kissing, that whole thing, which it makes sense because people with lung diseases and such, you get sick, it can lead to pneumonia quite fast, you know, faster than the average cat. And yes, I was really sick. I had my ambulance ride to the hospital, got that off my bucket list. And I'm in the emergency room, and there's a team of people standing over me, and they're like, so who's your pulmonologist? And I went, I don't have one. And they looked at me and they're like, what? Why are you still alive? And I went, ah. And I looked at them and I said, you know, let me just candidly say that just because you might have all these degrees and you went to school and you studied long and hard, that does nothing for me if you can't impart your knowledge and treat the patient as an individual. If you can't humanize this thing, I'm not a number. You can't scare people to death. And that's the reason I don't have a pulmonologist. I hated the bedside manner. I hated the way things were presented to me. It wasn't cool. I didn't feel like I was even part of the healing protocol. I was just some piece of meat, if you would. And that wasn't cool. And I wound up in my room, and I got visited by one of the head doctors there who said, I like a lot of what you said, and we would like to know some of the stuff you're doing because it's kind of amazing that you're still doing as well as you're doing. I'm like, well, okay. Flattery gets you nowhere. And he's like, what if you had a team of doctors that like maybe what you're doing and let you do that, and you work with us and we really work well together? If you had that, would that be something you'd be interested in? I said, yeah, it would be. And I wound up seeing this new practice here that's related to the hospital I was in, which is around the corner from my house, which is pretty cool. And that's my story. I'm seeing them. And when I was in that hospital, he came back into the room and he said, we're not sure what's going on, but you're responding really well to prednisone. And I'm like, am I? And then I had a visit at the pulmonologist's office after the hospital. And he's like, we think what you have is NSIP, non-specific interstitial pneumonia. So I'm smiling, I'm getting a little happy. He's like, oh, calm down. He goes, you're a very sick person. You're not, he goes, don't get too excited. We don't know. But some of these things are more treatable than others, is how he left it with me. And he said, typically in his experience, what he's understood, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis doesn't respond to prednisone. So I've been on prednisone for the last year, hence the nice bigness I've got right here. I've just finished eating the house before I came on. And that's been keeping my inflammation, I guess, at bay. There are certain diets and foods I want to get back to that helps my inflammation. And I'm on oxygen 24/7, and I'm on Lasix, and that's to get swelling and edema down. That's pretty much my story. Do I see them as much as I should? No, because at the end of the day, I'm still not satisfied with what medicine has to offer me. I'm just not. And, you know, I have my medications. I try to stick to my prescriptions and do the best I could. And I find that helping people and playing music and just living the best possible life I could makes me feel the best. And that's just the way I see it. And that's where you see me now and what I'm doing.
Don, thank you so much. Everybody give it up for Donnie Vapor one more time.
Yay! Vapor.
Thank you so much for sharing that story and your music. And Don will be at 6:45 on Wednesday. Get your fruit ready, people. And if you like it, we can have more time. We could have you know, we can expand this. And Don played our holiday party, and it was fantastic.
Thank you.
All righty. So our next guest is Dr. Marcella Debidda, PhD. Dr. Debidda is the Chief Patient Officer of the Pulmonary Wellness Foundation. She has a background in molecular oncology, which I don't even know what that means other than it has to do with cancer and molecules. But welcome to the show, Dr. Debidda.
Thank you, Noah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, thanks.
Yes. So Marcella, please talk to us a little bit. So we have this new foundation. Why the Pulmonary Wellness Foundation?
So we really, so first of all, I think that it was important to leverage all the work that you, Noah, have done, you and your team have done in the past 27, 28 years, where you had put together invaluable information, educational information for every possible type of learner. And I hear an echo, so I'm not sure if
Somebody is, okay, I'm gonna mute everybody and then we'll unmute you. Hold on, Marcella. You are good to go, Marcella.
Okay, and so really there was an opportunity to build a place for, to build this perfect place, leveraging the work that Noah, you had done in the past 30 years, where there was a really like a variety of educational material that you had put together that could really be given to people in a way where every person living with pulmonary disease could actually learn and also contribute to our learning. And also, like we leveraging what you had done, we saw an opportunity to put together education and also access to care by utilizing and making available the Pulmonary Wellness online program that you had developed a year and a half ago. That really is an incredible opportunity for people to get care. So here we wanted to build a space for people to take advantage of what a trusted individual in the community like yourself had done in so many years, and for people really to be part of the community and to feel like there is a space for everyone with any pulmonary disease to feel in a place that is safe and really feel at home. I mean, if I think about my experience when I think about home as like that place where I am safe to be vulnerable, where I can ask help or ask for help and also offer my help. And we really felt that there was a need for all people with pulmonary disease to have this space. And, you know, there was a lot that you had done. And so it was only a matter of putting together all the various components that you and your team had built. And this is how the foundation came to be already like 4 years ago. So it was just a matter of tweaking some things and reorganizing things. And on January 1st, I think that something magic happened for the healthcare space, which is the online Pulmonary Wellness Online program was made available for free to everybody. And this is something that, you know, it's very, very unique for the US healthcare system, where we're giving everyone the chance to take advantage of healthcare, no matter who you are, no matter of your financial status, no matter where you live. And this is something that is happening because of the foundation.
Thank you. You know, one thing that's really motivating to me is that, you know, I'm not a money person at all, you know, and I'm not motivated by money in any way, shape, or form. And one of the benefits that I love about giving it away for free is that for the past year, you know, my efforts have been directed towards people only who can pay for it. And regardless of the cost, okay, even $14.99 a month is 50 cents a day. And for many people, that sounds like nothing. But for some people, that $14.99 a month is prohibitive and might be the difference between medications or food. And so you say, as much as you want to do it, how can I sacrifice my medications or my food to do this? And it just didn't feel right to me to be only providing information, and I wasn't only providing information, but to be focusing on people based on payments. We've never run the pulmonary center that way, and I just, it kills me that that's how medicine, particularly in the US, is run. And I think it's unfair. So I think it's great that the foundation is able to do that. Marcella, what do you think is different about, or why would you say that people would be more not interested? And please, I'm going to ask you to answer without cursing. But how do you think that the Pulmonary Wellness Foundation is different, or how do you hope that we will be different than other foundations and organizations or associations or manifestations and creations?
So I think that I just want to start from what you said in the concept of giving the access to pulmonary wellness for free. I think we are setting new standards for healthcare here. I come from a place and from a country where healthcare is free for everyone. So for me, it's kind of how it should be in a way. But I think that we are setting and paving a way for people to actually see that healthcare can be accessible. And I think that, and so that's a very, very important thing. I think that we will have the opportunity to influence other foundations, other organizations to adopt this concept, and hopefully to extend the same practice that we are trying to establish, excuse me, and to extend it to other conditions as well. So this is something that goes beyond pulmonary diseases. The other very important thing, in my opinion, is that we are including patients as active collaborators here. Healthcare, so I'm a scientist by training, and too many times, unfortunately, I've experienced a situation where patient is just like a passive participant in his or her healthcare and healthcare journey. And we really want to create a space and a foundation where patients are really partners and are helping us to understand what it means from a human point of view to live with one's disease. Because it's only when we include patients as part of the solutions that we are able to create a better solution and a better experience in general. So this is a call for everyone who is on the webinar today. Please reach out to me. We will be launching a series of initiatives where we need your help. And then when I spoke about community and the concept of family, we really want to create a space where everyone here is engaged and part of our success, so that the foundation is not just something that Noah funded a while ago, I'm part of it, is your home place, is your own family outside of your family. And so we all need to work together to build it the right way and to make it grow and to take it and bring it where you want this to go. And I think that this is very different, because in the past 10 years where I've been working in collaboration with advocacy groups or foundations, I have not seen this. I still very much see a role for patients that is very minimal. Yes, there are support groups. Yes, there are leaders of support groups, but then, the patient is not part of the all design and the all activities that we want to design for patients with patients.
That's really interesting and important. Is there anything that so you want people to reach out to you? How do they reach you? What's the best way to get to you?
So they can reach me via email. My email address, I don't know, Noah, do you have a suggestion on how to better circulate? It's actually on
It's very simple. Breathe. We could do breathe@pulmonarywellness.org.
Yes.
Easy to remember, and that'll go right to Marcella.
Okay.
Her nickname is Breathe. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Marcella, that we didn't cover, or that you'd like to throw out there?
I don't know. I'm not sure. Maybe.
How'd you like Donnie singing?
I love Donnie singing.
Okay.
Donnie, I just sent you an email a few days ago. Get back to me. I can't wait to see you in person again.
Does anybody in the home audience have any questions or comments for Marcella? And for those of you that are here for the first time, it's great to see this many people here. We're about to hit 100 people on. So just the rules. So you are welcome. You're in control of your own mute button, which means if you want to ask a question, you know, make a comment, curse at the top of your lungs, anything like that, scream or heckle, you can unmute yourself unless you try to stage some kind of coup and take over the meeting, in which case the first time we mute you, the second time Beth will boot you. Does anyone have any questions or comments from Marcella Debidda, Dr. Debidda, before we move on to tonight's program? Questions, comments for Dr. Debidda? Going once, going twice, going 3 times, going 4 times. All right, you know where to reach her. Breathe at pulmonarywellness.org. Thank you so much, Marcella. Thank you, Donnie Vapor. For those of you that don't know Beth, Beth is my faithful assistant / admin who's literally pushing all the buttons, okay? So don't get on her bad side. And if you don't know me, my name is Noah Greenspan, and tonight's topic is ultimate pulmonary wellness. So one thing I'll say also is that if you have questions or comments, feel free to ask them, okay? I want to try to avoid sort of like these specific, I take 20 milligrams of this and 45 milligrams of that and eat 2 corn muffins for breakfast every day. I'm happy to answer those questions. I wasn't talking about myself. I was talking about Monkey. But the thing is that I'm happy to answer those, but I want this to be sort of the most beneficial for the most people. But there are questions that if you have the question, we can apply it to many different people. So here's the thing. So one thing that Marcella said that was really good that I'm going to elaborate on is the idea of access to healthcare, okay? But I'm going to tell you that a lot of what you experience day to day and over time is not so much related to your healthcare and your disease, because remember what I told you last time. I said that breathing is multifactorial, right? Meaning that there's many different things that can impact how well or how poorly we breathe. And I would make the case that a huge amount of what we experience both day to day as well as over time has as much to do with our self-care as it does with our healthcare. And what do I mean by that? Okay, what I mean by that is that very often the things that we do on a day-to-day basis, the way that we take care of ourselves, will have a much greater impact on how well or how poorly you breathe and your overall wellness as much as the medications you take. How do I know this? And what am I talking about? I'm really talking about the lifestyle issues, okay? And how you live your everyday life. And the thing is that very often I will see a patient who comes to me after a certain amount of time, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's a year, is when people usually check in with me and they'll say, you know what, I'm much more short of breath, or I'm much less short of breath. And when we look at their pulmonary function tests, they're exactly the same. So if this means that you can feel more short of breath or less short of breath, and there's no change in pulmonary function, what that means is that there have to be other factors. Lynn, hi, happy to see you. I'm glad you're joining us. I hope you're feeling better soon. So the thing is that there have to be other factors that impact how well or how poorly we breathe. And there have to be other factors that impact our overall health and wellness. And my idea of ultimate pulmonary wellness, and the reason why I wrote the book, Ultimate Pulmonary Wellness, is because in my experience, I believe there are 5 things that are crucially more important and head and shoulders more important than anything else you can do for yourself. And, you know, everybody's looking for the silver bullet, right? Everybody wants the pill. Everybody wants the essential oil they could rub on themselves. Everybody wants the machine they could blow into that's going to magically eliminate 50 years of bad behavior. And I don't say that with any judgment, because I am a huge proponent of bad behavior. But the idea is that the idea is that there are things that you can do every day that will really help yourself, okay? So what are these things? It's not an essential oil. It's not a machine. It's not a device, okay? Not in any order, but in our healthcare system. And please remember that these are being recorded and you will have access to them at another time. So don't feel the need to take notes furiously. I would much rather you kind of listen, take in what I say, make sure you understand it, and ask questions. So here's the things, okay? And these things are, number one, medical. And under the 20% of medical, okay, what I consider that is having the right doctor or the right doctors, okay, taking the right medications and taking the medications properly. So for those of you that have been with me for a year, you could probably say these things with me. That's okay, but that's good, okay? So that's medical, 20%, okay? More so in the United States than anywhere else. We are like a 95% medicine and procedure treatment country, okay? And maybe on the way out of, the office, your doctor says, hey, try to lose a little weight. Hey, try to get a little exercise. Hey, make sure you get your flu shot or pneumonia vaccine, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But 95% of the care is going to be based on medicine and procedures. And for medicine and procedures, you absolutely need access to a healthcare team. So you need those people, okay? But that's only a part of the puzzle. Next, exercise, okay? Short of quitting smoking, with the exception of quitting smoking, which if you smoke, the best thing you could do for yourself is to quit smoking, hands down. If you don't smoke, the best thing you could do for yourself is don't start now, okay? But short of quitting smoking, exercise is the single best thing that you can do for yourself and can have a tremendous impact on your level of fitness, on your breathing, on your overall wellness, regardless of where you are right now, okay? So there's a lot of new people here, okay? And you may wonder, why does boot camp start at only 4 minutes? And some people say, well, I can't even walk for 4 minutes. Well, that's okay. If you can't walk for 4 minutes yet, walk for 2 minutes. Take a break. Walk for 2 minutes. If you can't walk for 2 minutes, walk for a minute or 30 seconds, okay? But the point is that it does not matter where you are right now, okay? I'm looking around the screen, and I encourage you, I don't force it, but I encourage you to turn your cameras on if you have them so that we can see your faces and know who we're dealing with. You don't have to. If you're wanted by the authorities, don't do it, okay? We respect that, and we do harbor fugitives. But by all means, we'd like to see your faces. But exercise, whether you have a respiratory disease or not, you can feel totally different by whether you exercise or not. Next, nutrition, okay? Everybody, talks about it. People talk about it very often, okay? But nutrition as it relates to respiratory disease is different than the classic food pyramid that you've been taught your entire life. And each one of these topics we're going to talk about in a little bit, okay? Next, managing your stress and anxiety, also 20%, okay? Because it's very anxiety provoking to have a condition where the number one symptom is not being able to catch your breath, okay? Very, very anxiety provoking. And as you start to lose the ability to do the things that you enjoy doing or the things that you need to do, that can be depressing. And then this emotional condition can impact your physical. So a lot of the things we're going to talk about tonight are very cyclical, meaning that they cycle on each other and they spiral on each other. But the good news is that in the same way that by doing the wrong thing, and again, when I say things like this, there's no judgment implied, okay? I'm not saying good boy, good girl, bad girl. I'm just saying by doing the things that are going to be helpful to you in the same way that not doing these things, or by doing harmful things to you, in the same way that you can spiral downhill, you can start to spiral uphill as well. And good behavior and good lifestyle change, positive lifestyle change, will help you get back up the hill. Finally, prevention of infection, okay? As Don mentioned, okay, you know that a cold for you is not the same as a cold for the average person. It goes to your chest, it goes to your lungs, it becomes pneumonia, it becomes an infection, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And this can be a big hit. This can really be like a big knocking down of the bowling pins or the dominoes and really set you back. So there are steps that you can take to prevent infection that are very, very important, okay? 20% each. And the reason why I talk about these things specifically, not to say that there's not supplements that are going to help you, not to say there's not devices that couldn't possibly help you, but these are the things that are right there in front of you. They're free. Everybody can do these things, okay? And these are the things that over the past 30 years, I have found to be the most valuable head and shoulders over others. Any questions or comments so far? Any questions or comments? Going once, going twice. Okay, so now let me go back to these and hit them each individually, okay? So here's the thing, okay? For anyone with a cardiovascular or pulmonary disease, really pulmonary disease, the number one symptom is shortness of breath. And as we've spoken about, typically when people get short of breath, it's going to happen at high levels of activity. So think things like stair climbing, walking uphill, running for the bus, carrying packages, bending over, taking a shower, getting dressed. How many people have experienced what I'm talking about? Show of hands. All right, so you know what I'm talking about. Now, the problem is that typically when people start to get short of breath, they find ways to avoid the activities that cause them discomfort. And as a result, all of the muscles of the body that do those activities, all of the systems of the body, the hormones of the body, the chemistry of the body, the physiology of the body that does all those things become less efficient. And then you start to become symptomatic at lower levels of activity. And then you avoid those activities. And then you decondition again. And then you avoid more and more and more and more and more and more and more. That's the bad news, okay? But as I said last week, that's the bad news if you do absolutely nothing, okay? So our goal is to break into that cycle by teaching you more effective breathing techniques and teaching you the things that can positively impact your lifestyle in a way. And these are, again, things that you can do on a daily basis. They don't require a lot of money. They don't require a lot of equipment. They just require you to make some changes. So let's start, first of all, with medicine, okay? Having the right doctors, okay? Taking the right medications and taking the medications properly. Now, please understand, again, for those of you that are new here, I'm going to talk about a lot of different conditions and a lot of different information. Keep in mind that 90% of the information is applicable to 90% of the people, okay? There's more similarities than there are differences, and where there are differences, I will talk about those. But if you have questions, by all means, ask them, okay? What kind of doctors should you have? How many doctors should you have? Who should you see, okay? So first of all, the most common doctors that I recommend people have if you have a respiratory disease are internist, okay, internal medicine or general practitioner, okay? That's going to be your primary care physician. And depending upon who you are and who your primary care physician is, they will play either a larger role or a lesser role in, you know, there are some PCPs who want to manage everything and only call for consults when it's something super specialized. There are some PCPs who don't want to do any of that stuff. And if you say lung, they say pulmonologist. If you say hip, they say orthopedist. If you say jump, they say how high, okay? But the idea is an internist, depending upon where you are, will play different roles for different people. Everybody with a pulmonary condition should have a pulmonologist, okay? And at least a consultation with a pulmonologist. So if you have, you know, mild respiratory disease, you know, sometimes if you're asthmatic or something like that, your internist may dabble, you know, and experiment with some inhalers, and some internists are going to be more tuned up for these things than others. But, you know, when you have a specialized condition, you don't want somebody who dabbles in it, okay? It's like a haircut. You don't want to go to somebody who like occasionally gives haircuts, okay? You want somebody who does it all day, every day. So in my opinion, your main gun is going to be your pulmonary doctor, okay? I think that everybody with a respiratory disease should have at least a consultation with a cardiologist. Why? Okay? Between the neck and the abdomen, okay, we have a lot of systems there. We have the respiratory system, we have the GI system, we have the cardiovascular system. And the thing is that a lot of times the symptoms of these different systems can actually be very similar to each other. And respiratory disease and cardiovascular disease often have very, very similar symptoms. Shortness of breath is a non-specific symptom that could be heart or lung related. Chest pain or pressure could be heart or lung related. Discomfort in the chest can also be related to your gastrointestinal system. It can be related to indigestion, reflux, things of that nature. Many people with respiratory disease, because of the change in the structures of their thorax, etc., can also increase the pressure in their abdomen and their GI system. So the thing is, if you have gas and you mistake it for a heart attack and go to the hospital and they say to you, hey, you have gas, no harm done, right? But if you think you have gas or you attribute it to gas and you're really having a heart attack, well, that's a big problem, okay? And the thing is that, and believe it or not, most heart attacks can be prevented, okay? Believe it or not, most heart attacks can be prevented, but one of the number one symptoms of coronary disease is similar to a very famous river in Africa called the Nile. Get it? The Nile, okay? Now I say that in tribute to my mentor, Dr. Horatio Pineda, who loved that joke, and I love Dr. Pineda, and that joke will make it in every year, okay? But here's the thing, okay? How many times do we have a symptom and we say, well, it's probably that tuna fish that I ate at lunch, or you know what, I'm getting older, or I put on a little weight, or I haven't been exercising, okay? And you know what? All those things are great with the exception of the bad tuna that you had for lunch, okay? But the thing is, it would be great if they say, hey, you're getting a little older, which I don't believe age is a major factor, okay? I don't think age is ever a limiting factor. I have patients over 100 years old who can still improve their physical condition. So I don't buy that it's age alone, okay? I think lifestyle is much more important there. But the point is that you want to make sure that what you think you're dealing with is what you're dealing with. And if you have coronary disease, okay, and it's picked up before you have a heart attack and treated, well, that's a lot different than once the heart attack occurs. So prevention is everything. But for these reasons, I think everybody should have an internist, but in some cases, the pulmonologist and the cardiologist will really do a lot of internal medicine. Pulmonary doctor, at least a cardiology consult, meaning EKG, stress test, echocardiogram at a bare minimum. And I don't want to give you bad news, but just because, it would be nice if it were like this, but just because you have lung disease, it does not preclude you from also getting heart disease, okay? So sometimes people come in and they think it's respiratory, and especially if you've been seeing the same doctor for a long time and you've got a long-standing condition, everything can become attributed to your respiratory disease, and maybe it is related to that, or maybe it's something else. And the point is that I don't like surprises, okay? So I would much rather you get that checkup once a year and make sure that your heart is also good and in the right spot. Any questions or comments about that? All right, so that's having the right doctors, okay? I also mentioned GI. And again, gastrointestinal disease, particularly acid reflux, is something that's very, very commonly associated with respiratory disease. And that's also is kind of a chicken or the egg scenario. So the esophagus, which is the long tube where food goes down, and the trachea, which is the tube where air goes in and out, are very closely situated. And you have your thoracic cavity and you have your abdominal cavity. And the way that I kind of think of it is like a suitcase. And if one of them is overstuffed, that's going to impinge on the other one. So if your abdominal contents are overstuffed, well, that's going to push up on your lungs. And that explains why so many people are short of breath after a meal. And likewise, that pushing up of the abdominal contents can cause your abdominal contents to actually go over into the airways and cause inflammation. And if you have any type of inflammatory disease or any type of inflammatory respiratory disease, interstitial lung disease, that stomach acid is not for anybody is not supposed to be in the respiratory system. So they're very closely related. And there is also something that's called silent reflux. So a lot of times I'll ask somebody, do you have reflux? And everybody has this idea, I know what reflux is, and they think about it like heartburn, right? But there are other signs and symptoms of reflux that are not as obvious to people. And those are things like, do you awaken during sleep with kind of like this, what may feel like a big mucus ball in your throat? The question is that really mucus, or is that stuff that's coming up from your GI contents? A sore throat, a hoarse voice. So you may not have heartburn, but you may have a hoarse voice and not really know why. And it could be because you have silent reflux. And so for that reason, I think it's worth seeing a GI doctor if you have respiratory disease. So that's having the right doctor. When it comes to respiratory disease, okay, many doctors treat COPD. Many doctors treat asthma. Far fewer doctors treat the interstitial lung diseases like pulmonary fibrosis. And as Don mentioned, nonspecific interstitial pneumonitis or pneumonia. And the thing is that when it comes to these interstitial lung diseases, okay, more so than the others, only because COPD and asthma are very commonly treated. But in New York City, there's maybe 5 doctors out of the hundreds of pulmonary doctors. There's maybe like 5 doctors that really specialize in ILD. And one of the things that you hear a lot with the interstitial lung diseases, and I'm talking about things like pulmonary fibrosis, IPF, idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, nonspecific, hypersensitivity pneumonitis, nonspecific interstitial pneumonia, things like this. They're super complex. Like, even listen to the names, right? They're super complex. And not every pulmonologist that sees respiratory patients is going to be prepared to make a diagnosis and treat the most effectively interstitial lung diseases, okay? Now, the good news for COPD patients is that there's a lot of exciting things happening, okay? For a long time, the big changes, and I say big changes in quotes because they weren't really that big changes, but there were changes in the way the medication formulations were. So in other words, initially there were bronchodilators that were short acting, then there were long acting medications, then there were combination medications, and then there were just all these different shifts in how the combinations were. So it was kind of like you could have bacon, eggs, and toast, or toast, eggs, and bacon, right? And it was like not really that significant. But the exciting thing in COPD care now is the valves, right? These Zephyr valves and the wow, I'm drawing a blank right now on the other kind of valve. I'm gonna get shot for this.
Pulmonex?
Well, Pulmonx makes the Zephyr. There's I will get it to you. Let's just say valves for now, okay? But these endobronchial valves are a big, exciting thing for COPD, and they're moving all over the place. So if you might be a possible candidate for it, and over time, I think more and more people will become candidates for it as they get better at it, but it's worth asking your doctor, should I go for an evaluation for this? So that's COPD care. For the pulmonary fibrosis patients and for the ILD patients, again, you need a specialist. And if it means that you have to travel to a center of excellence where that might be several hours away from you to get the right diagnosis, well, that's important to do for the simple reason that when it comes to the interstitial lung diseases, the treatments for some are actually detrimental to others, okay? So it's really important to get the right diagnosis. And then same thing with pulmonary hypertension, which those are our real 3 focus areas. Pulmonary hypertension is not treated by every pulmonologist, and it's not treated by every cardiologist, okay? It's a very, very specialized area of cardiopulmonary care. And I met somebody the other day who's a young guy, 47 years old, and is attempting to be managed by his internist, and he's got moderate pulmonary hypertension. And the key to all these different diseases is that by addressing them head on from the beginning, we can play a massive role in terms of preventing them from getting worse and maximizing your function over time. So it's having the right doctor, taking the right medications, okay, and that goes along with having the right doctor and also getting the right diagnosis, and then taking the medications properly, okay? For the patients that are taking inhalers, okay, what you may not realize, because nobody ever talks about it really, with the exception of me and Mark Mangus, but the order in which you take your medications can play a huge role in how effective they are, okay? And that's why it's really important that if you are taking multiple bronchodilators, and even if you don't have multiple different devices, a lot of the combination medications will count as multiple medications. Then in that situation, okay, it's really important to know that the order in which you take them is important. And so you have to know what each one does, okay? It's very tricky when you go to the doctor and you're diagnosed with a condition like COPD, and you go home with these 3 pieces of paper and you take them to the pharmacy, and you get home and you have a pump and a disc and an egg, and you get home and you're like, what the heck are these things? And I say to people a lot, what order do you take them in? They say, whichever one is closest, or, you know, I don't have any special order. But the thing is that by learning which ones will really open you up and do something right now as compared to the things that are going to reduce inflammation over time can make a massive difference. And I've had dozens, if not hundreds of people tell me, you know what, I've been doing it wrong all these years. And it's not that you've been doing it wrong, because most people don't tell you these things. And a lot of people, I believe, truly don't know this, but they say, once I made this change, the medication started working better. Or people who say, you know, if you're using your rescue inhaler 5-6 times a day, something's not right. You're in control. You're not in good control, I mean. And the thing is that by taking your medications in a good order, in the right order for maximum effectiveness, that can help you get into better control. And all this stuff is in the book, Ultimate Pulmonary Wellness. And just so you don't think this is a shameless plug for my book, the book is available to read for free on our website, okay, pulmonarywellness.org. And there is a medication chapter there that talks about the medications. And same thing when it comes to interstitial lung diseases, where the medications are not usually inhaler-based, but they're related to, you know, preventing fibrosis from progressing. And then the pulmonary hypertension, where again, it's not typically inhaler-based, but it's based on changing the pressures in the blood vessels around the respiratory system. But it's really important for you to know what you're taking and to know why you're taking these things. And when you're making changes to medication, it's to your advantage to change one medication at a time. Because if you change 3 or 4 medications at a time, or you change the dosages, or you change the order in which you're doing these things, or this, that, the other thing, you don't know what's doing what. And patients come to me a lot of times with lists of 5, 10, 15, sometimes 20 medications, and it's very, very difficult to know what's doing what after a certain amount of time. And even I know when I go to the hospital sometimes and they're going through my medication, they say, do you still take this? I say, no, I haven't taken that in 5 years. Do you take this? No, I haven't taken that in 5. No. Well, you know, these decisions or these facts, you know, play a role in your overall wellness. And the idea is that we don't want to be taking medications we don't need. We want to take what we call, you know, the minimum effective dose of each medication. So we want to take as few medications as possible, and the minimum effective dose, the minimum amount that's going to be effective for you, but that's going to give you the most bang for your buck. That's medical right there. Having the right doctors, taking the right medications, taking them properly. Read the medication chapter in the book. And if you go back under the webinar section, there are previous webinars about medication order in which I go into more specifics, and then feel free to ask questions about this. Any questions so far? Any questions, comments, feedback so far?
Noah,
Yep.
can I ask you, every time you say pulmonary hypertension, are you talking about pulmonary arterial hypertension or pulmonary venous hypertension, or is it all the same?
It's not all the same. So it's definitely not all the same in terms of the different classes of pulmonary hypertension are not the same in terms of their physiology. and they're not necessarily the same in terms of their treatment per se, okay? But they're similar in terms of the functional aspects of it. So what I talk about more than anything else is how do these things affect your day-to-day function, okay? So in other words, what are the things that you can do that will make an impact on how you feel day to day? And it's not that there's not a one size fits all when it comes to PAH and pH. And, you know, in a couple of weeks, we're going to have Dr. Human Poor come on and talk about pulmonary hypertension. And we're going to also have Dr. Evelyn Horn. But I'm speaking in general terms. And the general takeaway from this is have the right doctors and specialists, take the right medications based on your interactions with those doctors and specialists. Make sure you know what you're taking, and also make sure that you know how they're supposed to be taken properly. And that means how to use the devices, timing of them. You know, there's a funny, I always say 90% of what I know I learned from patients. The other 10% I learned from watching House MD. And there's a funny part of House MD where this lady says, you know, my asthma inhaler doesn't work. And he says, well, let me see how you're using it. And she goes, do you think I'm an idiot? And he says, no. And he says, humor me, let me see how you use it. And she sprays it behind her ears, okay? And the idea is that these things are not necessarily intuitive. They're not foolproof. And one of the things that I say a lot is that one of the ironies of the respiratory medications is that for a group of people who have a lot of difficulty coordinating their breathing, all of these devices really require a lot of breath control and coordination of breathing. So it's definitely a skill you can learn. It's definitely a knowledge set that you can learn, but you have to know that those things are out there in order to ask the right questions. We'll get into specifics about pH and PAH versus PAH when we have the pH specialists on as well. Other questions, comments?
How do you find the right pulmonologist?
Who's talking?
John Klinkosh.
John. Okay.
He appears to be on the phone.
He's on the phone. Okay. Okay, no problem. John, so here's the deal. How do you find a good doctor? It's a tough thing, you know, and it's hard to know, okay? The best way I feel is recommendation from a good doctor, okay? Certainly there are doctors that refer their friends, regardless of medical training or ability. But I find that the really good doctors are only going to refer to really good doctors. And very often that will be independent of what institution they're at. So, for example, all of the best doctors that I know work with doctors at all institutions. And a lot of times they take crap for that because, you know, the hospital is saying to them, hey, you know what, we're NYU, you should be referring to an NYU doctor, or hey, we're Mount Sinai. And I'm using these purely as examples, okay, not as a pointing fingers, because all hospitals do it, okay. But the idea is that a hospital is going to really encourage doctors to refer within their system. Why? Because it's a financial game too. But great doctors will refer to great doctors. And I'm not talking about, you know, I really only refer to people that I know well, I know personally. The best doctor that I ever went to, and if you want to see a good webinar, go back in the special guests. There's an internist named Murray Berenson, and we talk about getting the right diagnosis. That's the name of the webinar. And this was my internist. He was also a gastroenterologist. And when I went to him, I did not have any gastroenterologic problems. He diagnosed me at the time with ulcerative colitis. I've later been diagnosed with Crohn's disease. But going to him and being a brilliant diagnostician, okay, this guy was able to find everything in the same way that Gregory House does, okay? If you watch House, when somebody comes in with symptoms, they write a list of 25 different conditions on the board, and they rule things in and they rule things out. That's what's called differential diagnosis, okay? Now, when Murray retired, I went to his replacement, who I call Dr. Quack. But basically, I went to him. I gave him a list of my medications. I gave him a list of my conditions. He took my blood pressure, listened to my lungs, and said, is that all? Is there anything else? And I said, well, are you going to do an exam? And he said, what do you mean? I said, are you going to do a physical examination? Are you going to do a gastro, exam or anything like that? He said, well, you feel good, right? I said, yes. He said, so why do I have to do an exam? He said, everything's okay. I said, well, the reason why I'm here right now feeling good is so that when I don't feel good, you have something to compare it to, right? Because that's what differential diagnosis is. But if you want to watch a really interesting webinar, one of the things that I talk about with Dr. Berenson, and the reason I went to see him was because every single patient of mine that ever went to him raved about the guy. And I said, I got to know what this is about. And sure enough, the guy spent about an hour and 15 minutes with me the first time, writing notes by hand with a pencil. And at the end of the treatment, he said, listen, you're our patient now. He said, you can call me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which good luck if you could find that today. You hold on to that person for dear life. He said, if you're sick, you're sick. And that was the best doctor I've ever been to. And coincidentally, later on, he became my patient. And he went through a ton of different doctors trying to get a diagnosis. And I said to him, I said, Murray, for God's sake, and you'll hear us talk about this during the interview. I said, Murray, for God's sake, you're the best doctor I've ever known. If you can't get the right diagnosis, how are the rest of us supposed to have any chance? And so you ask, how do you find a good pulmonologist? I find the best doctors come from good recommendations from other good doctors. Read reviews online, okay? They're not everything, okay? And the internet kind of allows people, I guess a review is only as good as the reviewer. Believe it or not, every once in a while, someone gives my book a 1 star. And I hunt them down and I find them. We believe in violence in Brooklyn, but the idea is that read the reviews, ask for recommendations from doctors, ask for recommendations in support groups. Okay, Facebook and social media is a great way to say, hey, I'm here in Waco, Texas. Anyone got a good pulmonologist? And then do your research. And you know what? Sometimes it's still going to take trial and error. You're going to go to somebody and, for me, I have a lot of doctors that I refer to. They're all excellent doctors. Okay. I'm obviously not going to refer to a quack, but one thing I take pride in is my referrals to other people. And I say to people, if I give you somebody, it's money in the bank. You could bank on this. And I've never gotten somebody back to say to me, I didn't like the person. Because in addition to being excellent doctors, one thing you have to ask yourself, and one thing I try to think about when making a referral is, how is your personality going to mesh with that doctor, right? Because somebody could be a brilliant doctor, and you may be the kind of patient that wants a cut to the chase. Give it to me straight, doc. Or you may be somebody who needs a little more hand-holding. Or as Don said, you don't want somebody who's going to be like, how are you still alive? That's a bad question, okay? If your doctor starts with how are you still alive? I'm leaving the room, okay? Likewise, a lot of times doctors will say to you, you know what? There's nothing more I can do for you. Now, that can mean many different things. And, a lot of times patients take there's nothing more I can do for you as there's nothing that can be done for you, or there's no hope for you. And that is a really bad message to give to a patient. And if there's one thing that's really a terrible thing to take from somebody, it's their hope, okay? And I'm not a bullshitter, okay? I'm not a believer in cheerleading you and saying, hey, everything's gonna be great, okay? No, but in every person here, I'm looking around the room, I can see you all look like my patients, okay? I see old people and young people and blondes, and some are blonde, but they're not really blonde, and some are redheads and they used to be gray. But the point being that Mendo's wearing a fake beard and mustache for some reason. I think he's in witness protection. But the idea is that you want somebody who believes they can help you. And when a doctor says to me, there's nothing more I could do for you, I take that information. Maya Angelou, I believe it was, said, when people tell you who they are, believe them, okay? And the idea is, if somebody says there's nothing I could do to help you, I take that, I say, thank you for your honesty, and then I try to find somebody else. And sometimes even two great doctors can get a different view of somebody, and they may come up with that one little thing that can change the entire trajectory of your disease. So I say, look for recommendations from doctors, read online reviews, ask social media, ask support groups, different foundations. So like the Pulmonary Hypertension Association, the Pulmonary Fibrosis Foundation will recommend specialists and centers of excellence on their websites. And the idea is sometimes it takes trial and error. And, you know, with insurance, sometimes it's tough to switch doctors. But if you're not satisfied, I'm not saying, I feel the same way. I feel the same way. Monkey said hello. But the idea is that don't be afraid to keep switching. And if somebody's not on the same page as you, and again, I'm not talking about denial. If your doctor's giving you good medical info, you have to analyze it. But sometimes it just doesn't sit right. And sometimes, you know, I believe in finding as many weapons and as many tools and as many teammates and as many compatriots as it takes for us to fight this war. And, you know, I always say I may go down, but A, I'm going to get up as many times as I can. And B, if I go down, I'm going down fighting. So long answer to a short question, but I think it's important to have the right doctors. Other questions, comments? Don, yeah, go ahead.
The other valve you were talking about was called spiration.
That's it, spiration. Thank you so much. Zephyr and spiration. Any other questions, comments? Don, I'm going to ask you to tell a quick joke because I have to get some water. But entertain the troops for a moment.
No pressure, no pressure.
Can I say something, Don?
Yes, please.
Just letting a few of these people know, I do know there are 4 people waiting to ask a question, so not to worry when Noah gets back. We'll tell him your names and he can ask you.
Good moderation. I like that. Thank you. This is cool. Can you guys hear? Everything okay? This is awesome. I don't have any jokes. Well, a couple of off-color jokes that I don't think I should share. You'll never want to have me back. So I'm gonna not put myself in that position, but I will take this time to hydrate.
As long as the doctor's gone, I'm not on the phone. This is John Klinkosh. I'm on a computer, but I don't see my picture on the screen. I don't know what I did wrong.
All right, let me find you. I know how. Let me help you. Okay, so do you have a camera, John?
Yes,
You do.
it's on a computer.
Okay. I'm not seeing. What you should see is at the lower left. You should see something that says "Start Video." All right, I'm ready. Just kidding. All right. So, other questions? Beth, who's got a question? Yep.
For John, I thought I didn't have a camera. I had a Post-it note in front of the in front of the camera. I had a sticky in front of the camera blocking it.
So you're one of those conspiracy theorists who think that we're watching you get dressed in the morning.
That's true.
Okay. All right. I welcome it. That's why I don't have a sticky in front of my camera.
It won't start the video.
What's that? It won't start the video?
No.
All right. We'll troubleshoot that during the week. Feel free to reach out. Who else had
Noah?
questions? Yes.
Noah, I just sent you the names on Messenger, but do you want me to do them? How would I just call the people? It'd probably be
Go for it.
easier.
Go
Okay.
for it. Patty
Go,
Hazard.
Patricia Hazard.
Patty Hazard, where are you? Oh, there you are. Okay, Patty, go for it. I will unmute you.
Oh, question?
Yep.
I'm just wondering, when you have COPD and you take a few steps and you're short of breath, your chest gets heavy. I've noticed that really a lot lately. Something my doctor doesn't seem to be interested in, and I feel like it has more to do with my heart than my breathing.
Okay, very possible. So that's the thing. When you say chest heaviness, okay, so there's a difference. So what are the symptoms we talk about? So there are specific symptoms, and then there's what we call non-specific symptoms. And when we talk about non-specific symptoms, that doesn't mean we don't know what they are or we can't describe them. It means they can relate to different conditions. So for example, you said chest heaviness, right? So
Right.
there are people who have respiratory disease and their airways or their bronchi can constrict, right? Or go into
Right.
bronchospasm. And that can make it feel like your chest is heavy, right? Now, chest heaviness can also be a symptom of heart disease. Now, I say this all the time. There's I think it's, I don't want to mention any names. I really would mention all the names if I could, but I don't want to get in trouble. I don't want to lose the foundation's money in a lawsuit. But there's a commercial now for a respiratory medication, and they say it feels like an elephant is sitting on my chest. Okay, and the reason why I think that's a tremendous disservice to people is because, and I have a 18-year EMS background as well. And one of the things is that when people talk about an elephant sitting on their chest, that was always kind of a classic description of a heart attack. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you associate that with respiratory disease, it's just like, you know, this Trilogy commercial where they go, ABC Trilogy, right? So check this out. Read my book. I came up with that years ago. Okay. I came up with that idea of anticholinergic beta 2 agonist and Trilogy. You owe me money. That's my point. But back to you, Patty. Okay. So here's the deal. It's hard to know. So what would I want if you were my patient? Okay. If you said to me, when I get up and walk, I feel this heaviness on my chest. So could it be COPD? Absolutely. But what do we want to make sure of? We want to make sure that it's not your heart, right? So what would I want for you? Okay. A lot of times a doctor will do an EKG and they'll say everything is good, right? But the problem with an EKG is that EKG is like a photograph. So I could take a photograph. I could say, I'm going to take your picture. And I could say, smile. We take your picture. We got a nice smiling picture, a normal EKG. You turn around and I give you the horns, right? Okay. That's why people say, I don't understand this. I was at the doctor's office. I walk right out and, you know, hit the deck. So an EKG is only one part of it. A stress test is very important, okay? Because a stress test is going to show you what's happening when you're under exertion, okay? And I'm going to talk about this for a moment. A stress test will give you electrical activity of the heart, okay? It will tell you functional activity because usually you're walking on a treadmill when you do it, okay? And that's problematic at times as well, which I'll talk about. But it'll also tell you about the vasculature of the heart. So it can tell you if there's what we call coronary ischemia, which means that the heart muscle is not getting enough blood, and therefore that's what's causing this chest pressure, okay? Now, the thing is that very often, so there's three things when it comes to the heart. There's the electrical activity of the heart, the circulatory activity of the heart, and the mechanical activity of the heart. So the electrical activity has to do with the conduction system. The circulatory activity has to do with the coronary arteries and how they provide blood to the heart muscle. And then there's the mechanical, which has to do with the pumping power of the different chambers, as well as the valves and things of that nature. Now, here's the thing. So you want an EKG, you want a stress test, and that's going to tell you about the electrical and the circulatory, but then you also want an echocardiogram, which is like the ultrasound of your chest. And so the ideal test is what we call a stress echo, because that will tell you about the electrical, the circulatory, and the mechanical all at once. Now, here's the tricky part, okay? When it comes to pulmonary patients, very often people are underdiagnosed. So we get what's called a false negative, okay? So there's two types of false readings when it comes to a test. You can have a false positive, which means it says you have the problem, but you really don't have the problem, and you have to go through further testing, or there's something called a false negative where it says you don't have the problem, but you really do have the problem. And in my experience, what I've found several times is with pulmonary patients, because you're very short of breath, it makes a treadmill test difficult to do, right? And the other thing is that the majority of protocols that they use for treadmill testing, their job is not to get, I mean, of course they want to get the best test, but they're going to use a test that's going to elicit the symptom in the most efficient way. And so it's going to be a test that starts out fast and high. And if your number one symptom is shortness of breath, and you get short of breath and have to stop, or the number 2 symptom, which is leg fatigue, right? So if you either get so short of breath or your legs get so tired that you have to stop before we see any hemodynamic changes, meaning before we see any electrical changes, before we see any circulatory changes, and before we see any mechanical changes, it can be negative. And so a lot of times I'll get a report and it says patient did, 1 minute and 20 seconds negative for heart disease. And the fact of the matter is that patient wasn't pushed. And so if you're really not sure, or you really have a suspicion that nothing's changed in your lungs, I would ask for what's called a pharmacologic stress test or a chemical stress test, where they actually, you stay on in a table or on a gurney, and instead of being asked to walk on the treadmill, you're given medication that simulates exercise. And in my opinion, it's a super underused test in pulmonary patients. And again, most heart attacks can be prevented if you know that there are risk factors there. I have a doctor who says, listen, you tell me how much change you want to make. You tell me how much exercise you want to do. You tell me how well you want to eat, how much weight you want to lose. Tell me what you're realistically willing to do, and then I'll do the heavy lifting from there. So the idea is if you're not willing to give up your nightly creme brulee, he'll increase your medication to do that. But in your case, so you say you get up, you're feeling like your chest is heavy, right?
Yep.
I would want that checked out, okay? And I'd want it checked out well. And if it comes back and it turns out that it's not your heart, then that means, okay, we're cleared boot camp, okay? Or, okay, we're cleared rehab, because then there's things that we can do for you, okay? And even if it is your heart, there's still stuff that can be done for you. There's medications that can protect you. What we don't want boot camp to hurt you. We don't want boot camp to harm you. We certainly don't want it to kill you, which is why we want you to get screened very, very well, which is why, the initial evaluation with somebody is crucially important. And a lot of doctors, when you see them, you'll tell them, they'll rely on you to give them the symptoms, but then they don't go and ask further questions, even about other systems, because a lot of times these things are related. So in your case, Patty, I would want, if your doctor says, and again, if a doctor won't do a test, I worry about that. I went to this gastroenterologist one time, and as crazy as it sounds, I'm going to give you some intimate information about me that you don't want to know. So if you don't want to know it, cover your ears, okay? But the idea is I wanted this guy to do a colonoscopy. Now, who the hell wants a colonoscopy, right? And the guy said to me, you know what? You may have some inflammation that may not be worth going after. And I grabbed him by his tie, and I brought him right up to my face, and I said, really? It may not be worth it for who? I said, because for me, it's worth going after. And he said, you just had this test a year ago. And I said, but I wasn't sick then. And don't get the idea that if you had a stress test 5 years ago and everything was okay, that it's okay, because things change, okay? So if the symptoms change, or you have new symptoms, or they're different, and when I say a change or a progression in symptoms, what I'm talking about is either they're more frequent, okay? They're more intense. They come on with lower levels of activity, or they come on at rest. That's a sign that there's been some kind of physiologic change, and we need to find out what it is.
All right. That sounds great. No, thank you.
All right. Good luck. And if you have questions, let me know. Who else, Beth?
Barbara Sorensen.
Okay, Barbara. And guys, don't worry if we get off track, okay? I don't have a track. So the idea is if we don't cover the stuff tonight, we're going to get to it, okay? And I try to give you stuff that's effective for everybody. So Barbara, go for it. Question. Where are you, Barbara? Beth, do you know her question?
No, but no, because we don't have a chat. She is unmuted.
Barbara, can you say something?
Hello, I'm sorry, I didn't have a question.
Barbara, if you can hear, oh, you didn't have a question? You did something wrong. Beth outed you. She might know.
she unmuted herself about 6 times, so yeah. And the next one is Mendo.
Well, Beth, thank you for not embarrassing her. Mendo, go for it. Mendo. Where did you go, Mendo? There you are. Let me unmute you, Mendo. Go for it. Nope. Same problem. Mendo, I think your microphone is broken. I think there's something wrong with your microphone. Phone? Nope. Do you want to send an
I
email?
think he wants to chat. He's showing you his
Yep.
typeboard.
Yeah, we're not we turned off the chat and we cannot remember how to put it on. Sorry. Next week we'll have it though. But Bruce, feel free to email me. All right. Any other questions, comments before we move on? Okay. That's medical, 20%. Having the right doctor, taking the right medications, taking them properly. Exercise. Okay. Exercise, in my opinion, is the single best thing you could do for yourself. It can change a lot for you. And as I mentioned before, okay, your body gets good at doing what you ask it to do. So if you ask it to sit on the couch and watch 25 episodes of Ray Donovan while you eat ice cream, that's what you get good at, okay? If you ask it to move, it can move. And very often I will see people who get much more short of breath, and it really is mostly related to their level of conditioning. Now, there's different types of exercise, and I'm going to speak specifically through them in the context of boot camp, okay? Most important exercise for people with respiratory disease is, well, let me start first with breathing techniques, okay? So there are different techniques. We talked about them last week. If you haven't seen last week's webinar, we will be posting it soon, in which we talk about the various breathing techniques. And it's important to know these techniques, the pursed lip breathing, the paced breathing, the diaphragmatic breathing, not as exercises themselves, but as tools and as a bridge that will help you do the things and allow you to exercise more, because it's that workout that will change your body's physical makeup and your physiology, okay? So breathing retraining is super important, and this is also in the book, and there's also other webinars about it in specific detail, okay? Other things, aerobic exercise is very important, because aerobic exercise has to do with this continuous exercise that helps your body get better at using oxygen. It helps your heart, okay? And how your body uses oxygen is based on three main things. Number one, how good are your lungs at moving air in and out? How good is your heart at pumping blood? How good are your muscles at using oxygen, okay? All three get better with activity. All three get worse with inactivity. And keep this in mind, okay? Think of your body like a car. So if your oil filter is dirty, if your tires don't have the right amount of air, if your motor is old, if your spark plugs are old, your car will be less efficient. If you change any one of those, the car gets better. If you change two of them, the car gets better. If you change three of them, the car gets even better. So the more of these things that you incorporate, the better it's going to be for you. But aerobic exercise will help your body get better at using oxygen, and that's what we all need. And this is where the walkabouts come in, okay? So the walkabouts start at 4 minutes, and they go up by 1 minute a day. And if you continue to do this, if you could do 3 minutes today, you could do 4 minutes tomorrow. If you could do 4 minutes tomorrow, you could do 5 minutes the next day. And we talked about this last week, but just as a quick review, so there's the basic step, okay, where you're just doing your walking, okay? That's the easiest, okay? Then we have side stepping, okay? Then we have high stepping. Okay, let me move back a little bit. Then we have high stepping, where you're doing this as you breathe. And then we have squat stepping. So the easiest is basic step. Level 2 is side step. Level 3 is high step. And level 4 is squat step, okay? So as you're first starting out, just do the basic step and work on increasing your time each day, okay? As you get stronger and you want to experiment with more intensity, add on the side step and the high step and the squat step. But this is your cardio for the day. And 4 minutes is not necessarily aerobic, but these are the building blocks so that in 42 days, you will be aerobic and you will be able to walk more. Now, here's the thing. There's also arm exercises as you move along. Now, if you don't want to do it like that, or if you have access to equipment like a bike, like a treadmill, you're welcome to substitute those for the walkabouts. Then we have BBFS, and BBFS is breathing, which I talked about, balance activity, flexibility, and strength training, okay? And there's a very, very wide variety of activities there. And as I say, even if you haven't done them before, okay, try to give them the benefit of the doubt, have faith in the process, and different activities will work different muscles. Now, keep this in mind. If you do no activity, okay, how many people have not exercised in a week? Raise your hand. Confession time. Okay, how many people haven't exercised in a month? How many people haven't exercised in a year? Okay, now here's the thing, okay? I know that at least some of you are lying, okay? Now here's the thing, okay? It's okay, it's all right. But the point of the matter is that even if you're not used to doing anything, okay, you're still gonna get breathing benefit from any of the activities. You're gonna get balance benefit from all of them. Flexibility, strength. A lot of times people wanna be really specific in their instructions, and they want to say, well, this is a flexibility exercise, you need cardio, or this is a cardio exercise, you need strength. The truth of the matter is that for most people here, you're going to get cardio, breathing, balance, flexibility, and strength training from the majority of the exercises here, okay? Again, there are webinars where we talk about this in super detail, okay? And we will talk about this later on, but tonight's kind of like the not Wendy's, it's the TGI Fridays, it's the TGI Wednesday sampler, okay? So that's exercise, okay? Next is nutrition. Now, nutrition plays a big role in respiratory disease, and a lot of people don't understand why that is. And there are multiple reasons for that, okay? Let me start with this fact. Different nutrients, and when I talk about nutrients, I'm talking about proteins, fat, and carbohydrates, will produce different amounts of carbon dioxide through their ingestion and digestion and processing, okay? And we talked about last week how increased carbon dioxide is actually the stimulus for breathing. So if you're already short of breath and your brain and your chemical receptors, which are located in the medulla and the carotid sinus, and if these, these chemical receptors get the signal that we have too much carbon dioxide, it's going to tell your brain, we better breathe. And it's going to go breathe, 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 breathe. And if you're already short of breath or having trouble breathing, or if you have mechanical reasons that are not going to let you listen to the instructions, where it's like, that George Jetson kind of, treadmill where it's going faster and faster and eventually he's in it, you can't breathe that fast, right? So you want to limit the foods that are going to cause a lot of production of carbon dioxide. So what are those foods, okay? So fat is going to produce the least amount of carbon dioxide, okay? At 0.7, there's something called the respiratory quotient. So fat is going to produce 0.7, protein 0.8, and carbohydrate 1.0. So what I'm telling you with that, the takeaway fact is that the byproduct, the main byproduct of carbohydrate metabolism is carbon dioxide, right? So if you have that big pasta meal, that big bread meal, that big rice meal, and your body is spilling all that CO2 into your body, into your blood, it's going to make it more difficult for you to breathe. And the other thing is that there's a mechanical aspect of eating and breathing, which is that I told you before, if you fill up this abdomen and you fill up that side of the suitcase, it's going to push up on your lungs and make it more difficult. Hey, take it easy. And make it more difficult to breathe, in addition to the chemistry. So for people with respiratory disease, the idea is you want good, healthy fats, things like olive oil, avocado, things that are going to actually not be cardio, they're not going to be atherogenic, meaning that they're not going to build up fat in your arteries. They're actually cardioprotective because they help clean the arteries. And you want to have good protein because we need to support muscle. And then you want to limit carbohydrates. Now, I'm not talking about keto, okay? A lot of people talk keto, and they're talking about keto for respiratory disease, okay? But keto is extremely restrictive, and it's too little carbs, okay? And if you don't give your body enough carbs, it's going to burn muscle for fuel once you give up your fat stores. Now, the main point of that is carbohydrate metabolism is going to produce the most carbon dioxide. You need protein for strong muscles and bones so that you can get the benefit of your activity, and healthy fats. Now, here's the other thing. Weight, okay? So for the overweight patient, okay, and particularly for the patient who has a lot of excess fat in their abdomen, okay, that plays a massive role in breathing. And that's going to be classic of the patient who's been on prednisone or steroids for a while, right? You're going to put it on in your abdomen, you're going to put it on in your face and your neck, okay? And that is going to significantly impact the effect of your breathing. So the idea is that if you're overweight, okay, then losing that weight. So imagine if you have, 25 extra pounds. Just think of it, if I said, here's 2 bowling balls, carry these around all day, every day for your whole life. Yeah, you're going to be more short of breath. Yeah, you're going to be more fatigued. Yeah, you're going to be more tired. And the idea is that if you can give those bowling balls back to me, guess what? You're going to be breathing a lot better and you're going to feel a lot better. So if you are overweight, and this goes along with my James Carville circa Bill Clinton campaign slogan of keep the main thing the main thing. So a lot of times someone will come to me, and as I said, their pulmonary function is the same, but they put on 25 pounds around their midsection. That alone is enough to make you more short of breath. So if overweight is your issue, make the clean effort to lose the weight, particularly by cutting carbs, because then you'll get the double benefit of the weight loss as well as the reduced carbon dioxide production. And here's another thing. For those of you that have the opposite problem, which is that many people with respiratory disease often lose too much weight or have trouble maintaining their weight, and that has a lot to do with the mechanical obstruction and feeling full, okay, and feeling stuffed very early in the meal, as well as the fact, so they can't get enough nutrition. Remember, this is supply and demand. And the other thing is that when you're working harder to breathe, okay, you are burning a lot of calories all day, every day. And so, you have that double whammy. So if losing weight is your problem, meaning that if you're losing too much weight, or if you're having too much, or if you're having difficulty maintaining your weight, that is really important, okay? Because that is often a particularly bad sign for people with respiratory disease. So in those situations, now here's another fact. Protein and carbohydrate each have 4 calories per gram, okay? Fat has 9 calories per gram, which means that if you're trying to gain weight, then fat is your best friend. And you should be putting olive oil on every single thing you eat, okay? You should be rubbing it on your face in the morning. And if you're trying to lose weight, then you want to limit your fat intake. And another thing to keep in mind is that your body doesn't care if it's a liquid, gas, or solid. If your stomach is full, it's full, okay? Again, it doesn't matter if it's liquid, gas, or solid. And if you're trying to lose weight, then the only drink you should be drinking is water, because it's going to fill you up, it's going to make you feel full, and it's got 0 calories. And if you're trying to gain weight or you're trying to maintain weight, then you should just about never be drinking water, because again, likewise, it's going to fill you up, it's going to make you full, it's going to make you eat less, and you're not going to get any benefit of having calories. So if you're trying to gain or maintain weight, then you should be drinking something caloric instead of water. Does that make sense to people? All right, nutrition, super complex topic, but that's the excuse me, that's the sampler version of it, okay? Any questions so far?
Noah,
Yep.
I just wondered if you had any experience with the bariatric surgery and had any thoughts that you could share about that.
Personal experience, no, although some people have recommended I get it. So here's the thing. Again, if weight loss, okay, so here's the thing. In the same way that what I said before about where my doctor said heavy lifting, right? I don't think it's a good first choice unless you're what we call morbidly obese. In other words, unless your obesity is about to kill you, which for some people it is, sadly, okay? then I don't think that's the first thing. Okay. I think the first thing is always going to be the more natural, the better. Meaning if you can get exercising and change your diet and lose the weight, that's a good start. Okay. I think Weight Watchers is a great way. A lot of people lose weight on Weight Watchers. But the other thing is you can't think of the big picture, right? So let's say you have 100 pounds to lose, right? 100 pounds seems like a giant mountain, right? It's like a Backstreet Boy, okay? So the idea is that if you have 100 pounds to lose, that could seem like a super impossible, daunting task, right? But if you think about 15 pounds as a bowling ball, for every bowling ball you give up, you're going to feel better, right? Now, that's my ideal, okay? That's the ideal. You get exercising, you watch your diet, you lose the weight, you feel better, okay? Now, if you can't do that, if no matter what you try, you can't do it or you won't do it, or for whatever reason it's not happening for you, then by all means, I know people who have had the surgery and have done very well, okay? Now, again, the question then becomes, well, if you're really not going to do it, where does that obesity become the greater threat to you than anything else? And where does that become the threat? It's not just, is it going to cause diabetes and heart disease and atherosclerosis and, other things? It's, is it going to prevent you from doing the things that you need to do to be healthy? So in other words, if that obesity is preventing you from being able to do the exercise that you need to get healthy, then it's a big choice and it's worth looking into. But again, individual choice that should be made with your doctor. I've seen people who've had good results with it. There's new stuff out there. I went to a doctor recently for hernia. There's these things they could do. It's like a plastic ball. You swallow this thing in their office and then they pump it up and it's like a ball that sits in your stomach for 6 months and it makes you feel full and then they take it out. So, there's a lot of different things on the market now. And the saying that I hate, that I use a lot, unfortunately, is more than one way to skin a cat. There's a lot of different things out there. So if you can't do it with exercise and diet and sometimes medication alone, then there are other procedure options out there for you. It wouldn't be my first thing, although if the weight is really a big problem for you, then it's worth looking into. Other questions? All right. Teresa?
I have a question.
Yes.
Pulmonary fibrosis and COPD.
Yep.
And I'm also thin. And I drink a lot of water to keep the mucus coming up.
Yep.
To keep it loose. What else would you suggest besides drinking a lot of water?
Juice.
Juice? Okay.
Beer? No, not beer. Listen, a lot of people question dairy, right? Like a lot of people believe that dairy produces more mucus. It doesn't. If you could have skim milk, if you could have a smoothie, if you could have, you should hydrate. I'm not telling you shouldn't be hydrating. I'm just saying that water is going to fill you up and give you 0 calories. Right?
So juice and milk dairy does not produce mucus?
It doesn't produce mucus. Now, there are some people who have this idea that when they drink milk or eat dairy products, they have the sensation that there's more mucus, okay? And for those people, I say don't eat the dairy. But, it's like there are people with respiratory disease, with mucus, who have no problem with dairy. So I wouldn't say go out and drink a gallon of milk and see if it produces more mucus. I'd say have 4 ounces of milk and maybe have 4 ounces of milk and 4 ounces of water with it and mix it and see if that produces more mucus. And if it doesn't, well, then you're getting more bang for your buck, right? As opposed to just water. But again, there's no absolute. So a lot of times you hear people going, Jack, and again, I talk about the chatter on the internet where people want to tell you the specifics and don't do this and give you the rules. The answer to 90% of questions is maybe, okay? So the idea is if it's not going to kill you, try it, okay, and see how it goes. But don't start with a gallon. Start with 4 ounces and see if you produce more mucus. But if you could, let's say, if you're drinking 4 glasses of water per day and you can somehow split that into half a glass of milk, skim milk and half a glass of water, well, that's a lot more calories for you over the course of a day.
Right. Thank you.
Sure.
One other quick question.
Yep.
The pulmonary fibrosis, is there a medicine you would recommend?
So I don't recommend any medicine. There's only two medications out there. There's Esbriet and Ofev, okay? And these are essentially what we call anti-fibrotics, or they prevent the development of more scar tissue. They
Can you
became
say
available.
them?
What's
Can you
that?
say them one more time?
Ofev, O-F-E-V, and Esbriet, E-S-B-R-I-E-T. They're not without side effects, and the typical most common side effect is going to be gastrointestinal, and they're not going to make you feel better, okay? Meaning that a lot of times people take them and they say, well, I don't feel any better. The idea is not to make you feel better. So it's not like a bronchodilator that's meant to open up your lungs, but they are meant to prevent the progression of scarring, which, as you know, is really important. So I would ask your doctor about those.
Thank you. Very
All
much.
right, two more things. You're very welcome. Two more things. So stress management, relaxation training, okay? Stress and anxiety management. As I said before, having a disease where shortness of breath is the #1 symptom can be terrifying, okay? And the idea is, how many of you have the experience where you set out, you start to get short of breath, and next thing you know, your mind is starting to go crazy because you're going, oh no, there's that shortness of breath, right? And what happens? Fight or flight response, right? Our body starts panicking and we put out that adrenaline. And guess what that adrenaline does? It makes your heart beat faster, and it makes you breathe faster, and it makes you more short of breath. And now we're like this giant tumbling snowball, okay? Going down the mountain, getting bigger, bigger, bigger. And this is what I call code red. And this is what I talked about last week when we talked about recovery from shortness of breath, okay? Knowledge is key. Knowledge is power, okay? And learning techniques and practicing the techniques, getting good at the techniques, and being able to say to yourself, stop, I know what to do here, is a very, very powerful tool. As I say all the time, if you don't know how to swim, you're not going in the pool. And likewise, if you don't know if you can walk to the grocery store or not without getting short of breath or losing your breath or thinking, oh no, this is the big one, right? Then, you're not going to do it. But if you know that there's two, it's like if it's freezing outside and I don't have a jacket, I'm not going out. But if I could put on a jacket, if I put on a scarf, if I could put on a hat and gloves, well, that's 4 tools right there. And my goal is always going to be to give you as many tools as possible, okay? Over the short term, anxiety will increase your heart rate, increase your respiratory rate, make it more difficult for you to breathe. Over the long term, it's going to constrict your coronary arteries. It's going to increase your blood pressure. It's going to increase your chance of a heart attack or stroke, okay? Depression also, okay? These things are often chemical in nature, okay? Now, again, the ideal is to make lifestyle changes to reduce your anxiety, and this could be in the form of specific techniques. There's a great application out there called Calm. I love it. It's a great app, okay? I'm not even asking for any money from Calm, okay? It's just so good that it's worth doing, and it's meditation, and it's consciousness, and there's another great thing called The Healing Power of the Breath by Dr. Richard Brown. And Dr. Brown is going to be my guest later on in the season. And there is on our website, under guest lecturers, guest physicians, there's a previous webinar that I did with Dr. Brown. It's worth watching, because if you can calm yourself down and say, you know what, I'm okay. This feels terrible, but I know I'm okay. And I have some tools I can use here. That's a very, very, very valuable technique and a very valuable skill for you. Now, okay, can I argue with the fact that it's anxiety producing, that it's stressful to have a chronic illness, especially one where people say you can't breathe, it's just going to get worse, and then you're going to, no, it's stressful, it's anxiety producing, and it can be depressing, okay? But there's a huge, relationship between the physical and the emotional, okay? You feel bad physically, it can make you feel bad emotionally. If you feel bad emotionally, it can make you feel bad physically, okay? And don't ignore one for the other, okay? It's really important that if you start feeling better physically by making some of these lifestyle changes, then by all means, you're going to start feeling better emotionally, but sometimes you don't, and sometimes it's chemical. And that's where it's important to ask for help. And that's where sometimes chemistry can play a big role. The other thing, and you know, there is a link. We used to think that, so the sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight, and that's mediated by adrenaline. And we used to think that, you know, we know the sympathetic nervous system sends out signals and we know it receives signals. And we used to think that the parasympathetic nervous system, which is rest and digest, only sent out signals. We know that it can receive signals and it can actually increase parasympathetic activity through deep breathing. And that is Dr. Brown's Healing Power of the Breath. He's got a book out there. Watch the webinar. Super, super beneficial. And the last thing I'm going to talk about tonight before I go to more questions, if you want to ask them, is prevention of infection. Okay? It is cold and flu season, people. Everyone I know is sick. I was just sick for 12 days. I never get sick. I was in bed for 12 days. Okay? I was happy to be sick to have the excuse to stay in bed for 12 days. No, I'm kidding. But the idea is there's a lot of stuff going around. Colds, viruses, bacteria, flu, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. These are the things. Number one defense, hand washing over and over again, okay? Then people think that you get sick by somebody coughing or sneezing in your face. It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be that overt. It could be that you're on the subway or the bus, you're holding on to that bar before you, Typhoid Mary was there, and then you get off and you rub your face. My grandma Peppy, she was talking about pimples, but she used to say, don't potchka your face, okay? Keep your hands away from your face because your eyes, your nose, your mouth, that's how this stuff gets inside. And anytime you're in a public situation where you think you might be touching something, wash your hands after. If you can't wash your hands, okay, carry around those antibacterial wipes, the sprays, the gels, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They work. Don't go around sick people. The grandkids are supposed to come this weekend. They all have the flu. Don't come. It sounds cold, okay? But the thing is that a cold for you is not the same as a cold for everybody else, and we need to protect ourselves. Flu shot, pneumonia vaccine, and there's many, many other things out there, but protect yourself. In summary, ultimate pulmonary wellness, medical, having the right doctor, taking the right medications, taking them properly. Again, all in the book that you could read for free on our website. Exercise, nutrition, stress, anxiety, and depression management, and prevention of infection. I could say 20% each. They're really 18% each. And the reason why I say that is because you could do everything right and some could still go wrong. You could step off the curb the wrong way and twist your ankle, okay? But the key is stack the odds in your favor. Learn as much as you can. Stay consistent. Stick with it. This program works. Questions, comments, feedback. Susan, do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I guess I do. I wasn't really planning on it, but
what were you flailing around for in front of the camera? No, I'm just kidding.
Italian and I talk with my hands.
Do you want to ask a question? You don't have to. You can tell a joke if you want.
Tell a joke. Well, you know what I was going to say, if I say anything, today was day one of a boot camp for me, and I'm really excited. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. I did the 4-minute walkabout. I went on my bicycle.
Awesome.
I was sure that I wasn't going to be able to do those 4 minutes without stopping, and I'll be darned if I, I did the pursed lip breathing that I knew all about, but I listened to it beforehand and did it steadily for those 4 minutes, and I was kind of proud of myself. So tomorrow's another day.
And guess what? Tomorrow's 5 minutes, okay? Couple of things. I always say, don't let your mind set the limit for your body, okay? So like you said, you thought you weren't going to be able to do it, okay? And one of my favorite quote people, John Wooden, okay? Don't let the things that you can't do interfere with the things that you can do, okay? Stick with it. It's like AA, work the program, okay? AA, friend of, what's the name, Bill? Friend of Bill, is that what they say? This is friend of Noah, okay? Work the program, okay? It will work. Trust me, if you did 4 minutes on day one, you're on the road. And the key is do it every day, okay? Do it every day. If you can't do, you know, I have a old yoga teacher named Stephanie Pope, and this is something great she used to say. She'd say, as long as, look, not every day is going to be as good as the last day or yesterday or tomorrow. We have fluctuations, right? But the idea is, and this is from Stephanie Pope, as long as you're giving 100% of your effort, you still get 100% of the benefit, okay? So some days you're gonna get up and you're gonna be like, oh, I really feel not so good today. Now, I'm not saying do something dangerous. If you think you're sick, if you think you're having a medical problem, no, that's not the time to push it. That's the time to get advice. But if you just get up, a lot of times you say, well, you know what, I'm feeling short of breath today. I don't think I'm gonna come in. No, come in. That's the time to come in, because guess what? Emma, did you get a haircut? I like your haircut, Emma. So the other, David, did you get a haircut too? All right. So the other thing is, all right, that's before and after. So Emma's the before haircut, David's the after. Sorry, David, I'm bald too. But the idea is, this is a wig. But the idea is, do something, right? Like Nike says, just do it. Just do something. And if you can only do 2 minutes, do 2 minutes. Or if you can only do half of it now, do half now and do it in the water. And do it I said do it in the water. I don't know what just made me say do it in the water. That was something, I don't know why I said that. I meant do the rest later. Okay, I really want to be doing it in the water. But the idea is
mic working now?
Do the rest later. Yes, it's working. I don't know who you are. It may be God, but hang on a second, God. Hang on 1 second. Here's the idea. It's like saving, right? So think of your health as a savings account. And sometimes you're more flush than others. So if you feel good, put in $1 or a $5 or a 20 or a 50 or 100. But maybe you're a little short today, right? So put in a quarter or a nickel or a dime. But the key is the more you put in, right, it adds up. And the more we have in reserve, when something goes wrong, the more we have to draw on. So do what you can. Do the best you can. Don't pressure yourself. If you have to do a little bit less, or do it now, and even if you have to return and do 1 minute later, just get it done, okay? Get it done. That's the key. Stick with it. But welcome to boot camp, day 1. Any other questions, comments, feedback?
I have a comment.
Mendo, you intercepted. Beth, I told you. Go for it.
But I wanted to say, I get out of breath just walking to the bathroom. An hour, when I got 1.5 miles on the treadmill. So it can be done. I've gone through the boot camp, and I walk an hour a day most days.
Awesome. And thank you very much. I saw your comments on efforts the other day defending me against the likes of, I won't mention any names, but thank you. I appreciate it. But it can be done. Listen, guys, this is free, right? So I would say I'd give you your money back, okay, if it doesn't work. But the idea is I've been in practice for almost 30 years, okay? And if this were snake oil, I'd have been gone already, okay? This program definitely works. We just did our first paper on it. It works. We know it works, okay? But you got to stick with the program and don't get discouraged, okay? It's easy to see the bad. It's easy to see what doesn't work and get caught up in that stuff. And especially when you go to the internet and it says, guess what? You have this chronic disease and it's only going to get worse. And then, listen, that's life, okay? We're all going to get worse and die at some point. But the idea is, if you're not doing all the things I talked about, you can get better. And I'm looking around again. You guys look like my every day of work, okay? You guys are my bread and butter. And it works if you work the program, okay? You got to work the program, and it will work. And if not, Mendo will give you your money back, And Mendo, there's something we got to talk about. There's something about that I won't mention here, but I know I owe you some money, and I will give it to you. But anyway, and it's not because the program doesn't work. The program works. Other questions, comments, feedback?
Yeah.
No.
Yep.
I got to go. My back hurts, but I want to thank you for everything you've done for me and the rest of us, and congratulate you on that nice write-up.
Thank you.
It was really good. It's about time you're getting noticed.
Thank you so much. Which write-up?
When it COPD net, the one where they called you colorful.
Oh, okay. Thank you so much.
It was on your,
I know which one you mean now. I thought you meant there was a new one. I'm used to people writing about me, but it is often on bathroom walls and involves cursing. But that's usually my
Yeah.
employees. Marcella, you can laugh. It's okay. I know you're trying not to laugh.
I saw this on Facebook and I was really, really glad of it.
Thank you
So,
so much. I appreciate it.
so good night, everybody.
Good night, guys. Good
See you
night.
next week.
Other questions, comments, feedback?
No, I just wanted to ask you something. It's Linda
Hey,
Williams.
Linda.
Linda Williams.
Yep.
I have a cousin who has NSIP. She was
Yep.
told she was in remission very shortly after she got pneumonia, had to go to the hospital, is now home again, but her husband now has pneumonia.
Yep.
He
Problem.
just got diagnosed. And what do you do in a household when they both?
It's a problem. It's a problem. You know, so the thing is that, you know, if I want to say what's really going to give her the best chance of, you know, of getting better and not getting sick again, it's they stay in separate rooms. It's that they wear a mask when they're together. It's that they eat at different times. It's that they wipe things, surfaces down in between use. Okay, it sounds extreme. You know, keep the windows open. When possible, air it out. Lysol, if you can use it, there's odorless Lysol. There's super frequent hand washing. Use different bathrooms. Keep the toothbrushes and the glasses in different spots.
Should they both wear a mask?
I mean, ideally, you know, it's a better solution. You know, because then it's what he's putting out and what she's taking in. And I know that sounds extreme, but you know, this is, you know, getting a cold or getting pneumonia or getting sick, this can be serious. This can be very, very serious and wind people up in a jam. So, you know, it's got to be taken seriously. And, you know, unfortunately, that doesn't sound like the most pleasant thing there is, but it's my.
Okay.
Other questions, comments?
Thank you.
Sure. Questions, comments? Sherry.
A comment. I'm usually at this point in my life pretty calm, and I really only let if something is related to health or safety bother me. But I have a sister who's very mentally and emotionally ill, and so she started up last week, and I knew to keep. I don't drive, and I was pretty calm. Today, her case manager called, and she's screaming in the background. And I literally screamed at her probably for 20 minutes. How do you breathe when you know? I mean, I wasn't going to stop. She said, "You're yelling at me." And I said, "Yes, I am. After 50 years, I'm finally going to tell you what I think." And so she started crying. I didn't care. I needed to say what I needed to say. Do I breathe?
You want me to teach you how to breathe and scream at the same time?
Yes.
I don't know if that's healthy. I don't know if I really want to assist with this because.
Well, but wait a minute. She left in that. I'm not. The way she cursed, it doesn't.
Okay.
I couldn't.
Let me just say it like this, okay? It doesn't matter if you're talking, screaming.
I was screaming.
Okay, but it doesn't matter if you're talking, screaming, playing the harmonica, saxophone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The blowing out is the blowing out, right? So talking is like blowing out. So if I wanted to scream, I would breathe in, and be like, "Listen, you son of a bitch, I want you to shut," you know, like that, okay? But the idea is it's talking. It's like people who have difficulty walking and talking, right? So it's like this. It's like, breathe in. Okay, let's talk. Now that's like blowing out, right? Because when we're talking or screaming, that's a great question. To first, I have to be honest with you. And it's an honest question, is when you're breathing in, it's like people say, well, you know, breathe in, blow, 2, 3, 4. And you could practice that. So breathing in, blow, 2, 3, 4, blow, 2, 3, 4. But while we're on the topic, let me just give you one piece of advice, okay? You know, like when you're on the plane and they say if something happens, the oxygen mask will drop down, put your own oxygen mask on first, okay? Take care of yourself first, okay? And it's not to say be selfish. It's that if you are not taking good care of yourself, you will not be any good to anybody else, okay? So take care, and I would try to work on how to manage that stress more than I would try to work on how to breathe when you're screaming, okay?
Well,
this
it was
is my
just
personal advice.
no. My thing is, I'm done for a while. The case manager said to her, I don't want to mediate between the two of you, but I how do you say, you know, it was difficult. She's crying, but she is emotionally, mentally ill, and I have protected myself. And when I've said many times, I take care of me first. Oh,
Sherry, we lost her.
I'm not talking to her for a while. I'll just send money is what she wants.
All right, well, I'm sorry. That's a tough situation, and I'm sure we could spend a long time on setting boundaries. And I'm gonna set the boundary right this moment. Sherry?
Yeah.
In, and scream, 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 scream. Other questions, comments, feedback? Before we wrap for the night, I want to thank Dr. Marcella Debidda for being here. Even though she's trying not to laugh at my jokes, it's okay. She thinks my head is too big. She's trying to calm it down. And I want to thank Donnie Vapor. And Don, you want to send us out with a song?
Sure.
Or a joke?
Yeah, I can do that.
All right, everybody. We will see you next week. And next week, we have some special guests, and we got a lineup coming up. And guys, stick with the program because it works. Trust me on this. And if not, like I said, Mendo will give you your money back. Take it away, Donnie Vapor. Have a great week, everybody.
1 second. Thank you, Noah. I want to pick up on something that you just said as far as being selfish. I have a song called Taught Me Many Things, and I start telling people when I play it about being on a plane. I can't believe you just said that. And when the oxygen mask comes down, and bottom line is the song's about you can't love somebody until you fill yourself up with self-love. And selfishness gets a bad rap in our society, but it's not so bad. You have to overflow in order to help somebody else. And this song is exactly what you're talking about. I thought that was interesting. I don't have my foot pedals here, so I'm going to stop and move the lyrics around. You think I would have memorized it, but I haven't. It goes like this. Need a capo. Wasn't expecting to play. All right. The day you came along, I felt alive. Every day was just the same most of my life. But the lessons that I learned all turned out to be true. That you have to love yourself before you say, baby, I love you. Baby, you have taught me many things. Won't you all come along and help me sing? Let's shout for
Donnie Vapor.
everything. 'Cause baby, you have taught me everything. I used to feel so scared. I had tried all the hopes and dreams that has. But you had me trust in me and see all I could do. Then I learned to love myself, and now I say, baby, I love you. Baby, you have taught me many things. Won't you all come along and help me sing? Let's shout it from the rooftop and give it everything. 'Cause baby, you have taught me many things. Sometimes we need a loving, helping hand. Sometimes we need someone who cares. Sometimes we need someone to understand. That's all we need. Baby, you have taught me many things. Won't you all come along and help me sing? Let's shout it from the rooftop and give it everything. 'Cause baby, you have taught me many things.
Ladies and gentlemen, Donnie Vapor, thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, next week we're going to be talking valves with Dr. Eugene Shostak from Cornell Medical Center. But
Okay, here you go, Coco.
it doesn't mean it's not going to help.
Here,
Have a
Coco.
great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Who said I'm cuckoo?
Bye.
Love this song. Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Marcella Debidda, Donnie Vapor, Beth Swan White. Have a great week, everybody. You can do it.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.